We have a crazy family.
You do.
So I'm perfect for this right now. Hi there, everybody. Hi there. Here's some insanity for you. First, I need to talk about how Clint always gets my best sides.
Right now, it's kind of like coming over this shoulder.
Okay.
So we don't really see your face as much. You can turn and look at the camera, though, if you want to.
That's Mr. DeMille.
I'm ready for my close-up.
Maybe
Mr.
Clint
DeVille?
can do the
Was it
top
DeVille
really
or
missed
It was
DeVille?
DeVille.
Was it
I'm ready
DeVille?
for my close-up. Who was it? Was that Faye? No, not Faye Dunaway. Who was it?
Oh, gosh.
Betty.
Betty White.
No, not
No,
Betty
that
White.
Betty White.
Not that Betty White. It was one of the OGs.
Or not Betty White. It was Betty. Oh, gosh.
She's
I'm going to get my gay card
Grable.
removed.
Was it Grable? Betty? No.
Sunset Boulevard, right?
Why
was
you
Sunset
listen?
Betty.
I'm gonna have to. Can I have your gay card right now? Right now.
Yes, I do.
I am
have
so
it.
upset
It's in
because
my
it
wallet.
was not no wire, not Faye, not what's
Joan
her face,
Crawford. It was
not Joan
Betty.
Crawford.
Oh
She
my
was
gosh.
her nemesis.
She
Why
was
don't we
Betty.
know this?
And it was
I'm
just
Googling it.
feud with
This
Joan
is
and
sad.
Betty. Betty.
Yes, Joe. And it
Gloria
was
Swanson.
no.
Black Betty.
Betty.
Bam, lamb. You're
Betty.
welcome. She was. It was in.
Oh, spoken
Madonna's
by
song.
Norman Desmond, played by Gloria Swanson in the film Sunset Boulevard.
Oh, I thought
Then
it was Betty. What's her face?
Betty Grable?
No, Joan Crawford and Betty.
They had a huge issue. I'm listening to Vogue in my head. Madonna talks about her.
Betty Davis.
Betty Davis.
Oh,
What's wrong with
gay
us?
card back.
Oh, got it. My Gen X card.
Got
too.
it
I mean,
back.
Yeah, well, I mean,
We need to
You
have
got
a
my
Turner
gay
Classic
card, yeah.
movie.
And I
I mean,
feel
when
like-
you didn't know who Lin-Manuel Miranda was, like,
say it
I
again.
mean-
I need to learn it.
Lin-Manuel
Manuel
Miranda. Lin-Manuel is hyphenated.
he just had you say it again, slow, so he can read your lips.
Yes.
Stop it.
Oh my, should we shut the door
We can. Yeah, sure.
in case somebody comes down? Are they clean again?
I have not changed any of the temperature in here is going to... Hold on.
All right.
Did you know that Lin-Manuel Miranda wrote his first musical in undergraduate, and he won a Tony Award for it?
Miranda.
What
When
was
I was,
it?
it was in the Heights. He wrote in
Oh,
the
it was
Heights
in the
as an
Heights and-
undergraduate.
My God, he's talented.
He's a genius.
Where's my talent, except for my keen ability to regulate people?
That
It's
is
my superpower.
a talent, and if you would like to raise my kid for a few years, I'd be
Yeah.
fine with that.
I don't know. Mine, I did pretty good. Mine are doing all right, but it's different when it's yours.
Yeah, fair. I texted my friends this morning. This is our last segment for today. Is going to be you answering everyone's parenting questions. I'm like, guys, she's a genius. She knows so many things.
Well, and I did ask Jonathan if he could ask you a question about so we have one from even how to regulate an adult. So, but yeah, so today we're here with Tiffany White. She is the Director of Program Development and Fidelity for Treatment, Foster Care, and Community-Based Services here at the Village Network. She is... Boy, that just rolls off the tongue. That's a mouthful.
Does it though?
Just a beautiful title.
Yeah, it's a lot.
You have a lot of words in your title.
It's setting me up. Setting me up to be awesome.
It
Yes.
really is.
Yes.
And as part of her plan to take over the world,
Mm-hmm,
Tiffany has been a licensed independent social worker with supervision designation for 24 years. That's
Mm-hmm.
correct. And
25.
25, and is excellent at answering all of our questions because Lynette and I always have them. And now Clint, I'm sure
I will have plenty.
Many. She explains dysregulation with humor and humility, and most of all, how to recognize it in ourselves and deal with it. So welcome, Tiffany.
Hello, everybody. I am so happy to be here.
Oh, we're so happy.
I'm always ready for my close-up. We were just talking about that.
It's true.
Gloria Swanson.
I love that. And so as you tell us about, I wanted you to open today with a story that you shared with me at dinner one night, and then we shared with Lynette at lunch, where I think we totally raised the volume at a Bob Evans.
We can't wait to make a scene.
I know.
We really can't. But here's the reality. The reality is, I talk this stuff. I walk this walk. I believe this. I know it. But I, too, can be a victim of it, just like any one of us. And so, it takes me back to a Maya Angelou quote that do the best you can until you know better, then you do better. There it is, right? So I guess I want to say to everybody, you're constantly evolving, right? And that's important to know that you can constantly evolve, and you can constantly know that you can make some improvements, internal improvements. So I say that as an introduction to everybody hearing about me going crazy crazy. Okay? Just a little crazy. Just a little crazy. So, picture this. Plain Township, 2024. Golden Girls reference. Okay. So, it's a normal morning. My daughter is going to school. So she's a bit of a handful, 20 years old. And she had to be at school at 10 o'clock in the morning. I had a 10:15 pretty contentious meeting that I had to facilitate. And, when you're telling people about certain things and providing feedback, I'm air quoting that for those of you who can't see me. Some of you can. So, I guess that a time crunch is never good for anybody, right? I was ready, had my cup and a half of coffee. I'm trying to limit myself because the more coffee I have, the more chatty I get, and I have to watch that. Because apparently, it's frowned upon in some establishments. So I'm getting ready. She's 5 till 10 running out the door. Her school's 4 minutes from our house, so she has time to get to where she's going, right? She runs out the door. And I'm just like, okay, have a good day. Right. Trying to be, give her a little bit of positive. And I'm getting ready to go. Got my pants on, my Zoom shirt, ready to have this conversation. All of a sudden, I hear the car alarm going off. And it is so, we have a quiet neighborhood. This car alarm, womp, womp, womp. And my insane old daughter runs in the door. She slams open the door and she says, "Where's the key?" Okay, back up a little bit and just tell you that the key to her car is not my responsibility, right? So I'm disarmed because now it's 10 o'clock. She's late. I'm getting ready to go into this contentious meeting, right? And she yells at me, "Where's the key?" And I say to her, "The key is not my responsibility. Where's the spare key that I gave you on Sunday?" Okay, here's the crossroads, friends. You can make it better or you can make it worse. I sauntered down worse, right? I chose.
You got to the road and you were like, it's time for worse.
Yes.
Let's burn this down.
How can I set this on fire and leave no survivors? Well, friends, watch this. So I say, you go look in your purse. You don't keep track of anything. All the things that are spiraling her out of control worse, right? So then she's got 15 purses. 15 purses and a little sidebar. My daughter is a type 1 diabetic. So she takes her sugar and she has these little strips. There's where her blood, they're all over the place. So there's piles of stuff all over for her looking for these keys. She then sums it up with, "I know who has the key. Dad has the key. He is so irresponsible." Oh, so then I'm like, he's irresponsible? Oh my God, here it is again, the crossroads.
Go for it.
And I said,
Double down.
got a shotgun for this one. And I was like, your father's not the irresponsible one. This is all you. Keep going. She's getting more and more dysregulated. In the background, womp, womp, womp. Can we then add the barking dog? And he's a huge dog. The car alarm, the barking dog, things being thrown all over. And then all of a sudden, I called my husband, of course. And this is what I say to him. He's like, "Hi, honey, you're irresponsible." So here we go. So now I'm starting with him too. And I was like, "Do you have the key to the car?" He goes, "Yeah, I forgot to put it back." And he's in Canal Fulton, which is about 35 minutes from our house. He's like, "Do I need to come right now?" And I was like, "No, what you need to do is hop in your time machine and leave the key home." Click.
Wow.
Right.
I bet you wish you had like a landline that you could just.
Yeah, well, I did it with my cell phone, like with drama, all the drama you can muster. Meanwhile, she's crying, "I'm late." She's getting texts from people, "Natalie, your client's here. Why aren't you here?" Everything's fine. So then all of a sudden I was like, nothing is getting done. Somebody's got to take hold of this situation, and it is not going to be her. And it's not going to be my husband. It's not going to be the car alarm. And it's not going to be the dog. So I go into my room and I should shut the door. And I have a self-regulation tool that I use. I call it 5-7-8. I breathe in for 5. I hold for 7. And I breathe out for 8. Usually 3 rounds of that prepares me for whatever I'm about to embark on. So 12 breaths later, I decide, okay, and I promise you, and I'm not making this up, I said, the spare key's in the red coat. Why? Because I was able to pull myself together enough to get my dumb part of the brain into the smart part of the brain. Cortex, open for business. Boom. Boom. I knew exactly where that key was. And of course I knew where the coat was because I hung it up because never could she do it. again, crossroads. So this time, after I have already burnt down the village, made sure there was no survivors, and stomped on puppies, I decided I'm going to do the right thing. So I go, and there the key was in that pocket. And I could have, I wanted to take the key and throw it at her.
So you threw it at her and said, here's your key.
Again, because she was outside, just literally like a shark around the car. Like a shark. And I was like, I yelled her name and I said, come and get the key. And she's like, did Dad bring the key? I said, it was in the red coat. It was in the red coat this whole time. So I hugged her. I swallowed. I hugged her. And I said, now go have a good day. And she's crying and shaking. And I was like, take some deep breaths, do your 5-7-8. Because I was able to think, everybody. I was able to get my faculties together. Now, rarely ever do we spiral quite so out of control when you have every factor that's against you and every ring in the circus is activating simultaneously.
You mean like life with a 4-year-old?
Like life with a 4-year-old, like life with teenagers too. But I just want to say, you guys, I sympathize with your causes. I've been where you're at, but I promise you, there is nothing like parenting adult children where you can just watch the episode, the sitcom play out. Can't say anything. You're not even in the audience allowed to laugh. Okay? You are just watching this go on and going, I thought I did better than this. But you did do better. What you didn't count on was that growth and that dysregulation, and about how this generation's exposed to so many more things than, like, say, Matthew and I were. We got to be kids, and this generation doesn't get to be kids. And I have to remember that. I have to be patient with that, right? Because a lot of the times I find myself being a little judgy, but I digress. So that's my story.
That is a great story.
Love this story.
Very, very relatable, especially for those of us who live
yes, I was gonna
with very
say.
young children. And it's good to hear that isn't going to go away. So thanks for that hopeful news.
Yeah, that's great. That's great.
here's some hope.
Lynette and I are going to go sit in a corner and cry.
Yeah. I suggest that you rock because it can regulate you. Rock and cry. Rock and cry.
But can we back up? Because I want to know, from your perspective, what is dysregulation and what's happening in the brain when that's going on?
So stress is your body's response to pressure, right? That's the dictionary definition, right? And all dysregulation is your stress levels reaching volcanic. Okay, so we have an arousal continuum. We all do, right? And so, like, if you stair step it, it's calm, alert, alarm, reactive, and reflexive. So I usually say when you start to go down the continuum, you're having some difficulties, right? So dysregulation is when you move from a calm, alert state down that continuum. And when that happens, you lose IQ points, you lose the ability to abstract think, you lose executive functioning. And so if you start out average, you need DD services by the time you're in a reactive, right? You need a walk along because you are unable to function like you would normally. So what we tell people, and we're out there and we're talking to these foster parents, and Dr. Perry said it really well, it's easy for us to say, just get regulated or try to regulate. This is not something that comes easy for people. I think the awareness part is what I'm really working on with our foster homes. And then the permission slip. The permission slip to say, I might not be as good at this as I want to be, but I recognize that there's a problem and I'm going to shift to change. Maya Angelou, once you know better, you do better, right? So just having that awareness and some tips, like what can you do when you start to dysregulate? I have said this to a lot of foster parents because we have some real challenging kids. Give yourself permission to step back. Say this to the kid. I can't think when I'm upset. I need a minute. What you're doing is a crazy service for that kid because you are showing that kid that this is a tool that you can use too. If I can't think when I'm upset, then eventually the kid's like puts two and two together. Well, I can't think when I'm upset either. So you're coming on a common ground, right? And I think that is what we're trying to do is get that first step. And then we're going to dose the rest of it because you cannot reason with dysregulated. That is my saying. I want to get shirts made, but you cannot reason with dysregulated. Moreover, people do well if they can. I've been a social worker for as long as I have under that premise. I can remember being 5 years old and saying to my mom, well, they're not trying to be mean. So this is a philosophy that I had adopted even at a young age that says people do well if they can. If you can hold on to those kind of things, if you can hold on to those thoughts, then it's easier for you to regulate because then it's not personal. But everybody's on a different continuum with their ability to handle certain interactions. And on some days, you're going to do better than other days. Parenting's a good one because, everybody has their bad days. But knowing you're having the bad day and tapping out is very important because you're modeling for the ones that you love how to react in those situations. Because you're entitled to your feelings. Everybody can't control those, right? But what you can control is response. So feelings are uncontrollable. Response is. So you have to be able to have that self-awareness, which, let me just say, is not on the shelves for sale on the regular. A lot of people struggle with that. I just recently had an occasion where I was facilitating a training and we had a very upset foster parent and she was yelling, how dare I schedule this training on this day? And it got pretty uncomfortable for everybody. And what I did do, which I didn't even realize it at the time, is I said, I am so sorry that this happened. I said, but I want to get started so that we can get going and we can talk more on break if we want to. So then afterwards, I had several foster parents come up to me and go, wow, you just modeled for us how to handle that situation because it could have gone a lot of different directions, right? And I have to say that my feeling during that moment, my feeling was, are you kidding me, lady? My feeling was, I don't want to be here 2.5 hours from my house either. You see what I mean? Like I was feeling some kind of way. It was raining. It was a Saturday morning. It was something that, you don't think that I wasn't feeling something, but I wasn't able to control my emotions because more than just an audience, this is an opportunity, right? This is an opportunity to demonstrate our clinical models in action. Because from her perspective, she was doing the best she could under her circumstance. She had a lot going on. There's a lot under the hood, friends. There's a lot. And I didn't want to impact that in front of everybody, but I wanted to give her an option. So it worked out. That worked out. I keep forgetting to go by the camera.
Oh, that's okay. So do you find it easier for you to practice this in your professional life than in your personal life? I know the people we love also are the ones who really know how to push our buttons.
That is an excellent point. And I have to tell you, it makes you a better wife and it makes you a better friend and it makes you a better mother. But there are certain people that will trigger you for whatever reason in your life. And that's when you have to be ultra aware. I shared my daughter. My daughter and I have this relationship where nobody in the world makes me happier or more angry, right? And she and my son could do the exact same thing. And I'd be like, oh, some of that is patriarchally bound from, my history and my patterns of interaction. And her, I'd be like, you need to get yourself together. But I also truly believe that independent women need to be independent. They need to be able to stand up for themselves. They need to do these things. So some of my worldviews factor into that. And anytime you're close to something, Lynette, it's a lot harder to see the forest through the trees, right? Mm-hmm. When you can transcend a situation. I mean, you've reached Buddha master level when you can say, this is not going to impact me, and you can go above and logically think. But social workers, a lot of us helping professions, we aren't in it for the logical. We're in it for the emotional. We have a personality that is feeling and nurturing. And so sometimes becoming aware of that is even more challenging. Nurturers will struggle more because of the feeling part of it.
How do you cultivate that awareness?
Well, it's years and years of work. I do my own. What I try to do is keep that baseline, with the calm, alert, alarm. I try to stay in between calm and alert at all times. And my personal preference is I have meditation. I do some meditation, some grounding work that I do every single morning, not forced. I do this so that I can have a baseline of a higher arousal continuum. And, I'm not asking people to do like I do. I'm just saying that helps me. And whatever that is. A lot of people do walking, like exercise. Exercise will take you to a place in your arousal continuum you want to stay to. So if you think about it, if you walk for 5 minutes, it clears your mind in a way that will make you rise on that continuum at least a half step. At least a half step. So if you're just an alarm, you get to alert pretty quickly, right? And then the more you walk, the more clear your mind gets. I mean, there's all kinds of science behind that, the endorphin release, et cetera.
And one of the things that we always do at our house, and I'm wondering how who's ever in the mood for criticism? I'll say, John, are you in the mood for criticism? And that can set them off just itself. But we're trying to be respectful, but also as you were talking about walking, I'm thinking about my walks in the morning and how wonderful that is. But then when you think about that moment where you chose the wrong path that we were all joking about, how do you? Because I think to Lynette's question, how do you stop that? How do you stop that? Because it's so easy. We know the triggers. We know the things that will.
Yeah, it's way more fun to make fire.
Yeah, why is that?
Oh,
How do we fix that?
I was just thinking about when you mentioned the Maya Angelou quote, Michelle Obama says, when they go low, we go high. And I try to live my life that way, but sometimes I take that elevator straight to the basement, man.
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, it's easier, right? I mean,
It's easier to go down than up. It's easier. Think about gravity. It's easier to go down than up. And that's in your emotions too. And so it is. So first you have to enter interactions knowing who you are and have a modicum of emotional intelligence around it. This situation that occurred with my daughter was a 7-minute situation. Telling the story took me 15. But the situation, it was only 7 minutes. And it was 7 minutes because I was able to say, this is not going to get better. Someone has to do something, right? And that somebody had to be me. But what did I teach my kid? I taught her in that moment, this was not going to get better. Somebody had to do something. And then, even as mad and as upset as we both were, I handed her that key and then gave her that hug. So that was, and it was a win. It started out as a huge loss, but it ended up being a win because it was a good example for her to be able to say, this is a honed and practiced skill. This is not something you're going to wake up one morning and go, I'm going to be great at this. I don't care if you're a perfectionist. You're going to struggle. You're going to struggle with this. And the way that you approach things, like the word criticism, that is a vile word, right? People aren't comfortable with it. Words can dysregulate people, the way that you approach them. The word no bothers a lot of people. We were just talking about this in a training I was doing because they were like, as soon as I say no, it's an explosion. And I said, I typically don't say no and had to train myself to use this term. So here's the situation. So that was no, but the situation was explained. So here's the situation. We have to be here at this time and there at this time. So that time's not going to work for me. So that's what I got into the habit of doing instead of using that word no. Plus I found with my young kids, no then was no back to me. So I would say things like danger when they were going to do something that was going to be, potentially. But I was this should not surprise anybody. I was the kind of parent and continue to be the kind of supervisor and employee that if you're not going to hurt yourself or somebody else, I'm just going to let you go. And you can self-guide. And when you need corrected, defer back to me. I will pet you like a pretty kitty and things will be fine.
I love that.
Yeah.
I want to be like you.
Well,
Same. We try. Our thing is our job is to keep you safe. And so you can you can do whatever you want inside, but if you're going to be unsafe,
That's it.
then we're going to intervene.
So that's why we use the word danger when it was something like I'm getting close to the steps. Danger. You know, my kids were really like free roam chickens. You know, I just had them in a.
They were out in the front yard
Yes,
just
they were-
pecking at the
I had
grass.
one of those fences, so they got a little shocked. I'm just kidding, everybody. I'm just kidding. I didn't shock my children. Nobody call. Well, they're old now, but
Yeah, they're old now.
I mean, one's an engineer, so I didn't do too terrible. So I say that to say that, you know, that autonomy and that personal freedom, that makes a difference when you're parenting your kids too, because this is how they're learning to regulate. This is how they're learning how to interface positively. You know, your kids want to be just like you. What part of you do you want them to be? I used to say this to my sisters all the time. Love you, sisters, but both of them would eat their young if given the choice. I told them tarantulas step back because I used to tell them because they were impatient and things like, I was like, chill out. My sister had like this octagon where she kept my nephew in. I called it baby jail. I was like, oh, Josh gets to come over and play baby jail with Matthew, right? And she was like, I need control. I need to make sure that he doesn't go out of there because he could get hurt. He could get hurt. I mean, poor Matthew. He was going down the step on his bum until he was 5 years old because this was her anxiety that she imposed on him. Meanwhile, my son was swinging from trees, you know. I mean, no, not exactly excited about that, everybody. But, you know, I was yelling danger. Danger. But that's basically how I cultivate it. It's an awareness that is practiced and honed. It isn't something you are going to wake up with. You got to be patient with yourself. These are, and be realistic about why you want certain things to be the way that they are. And remember, when you're coming from the experience of somebody like me and trying to put rigidity around children, you look back on it and you go, why did I do that? Why did I waste my time trying to figure out how to get my baby out of the bed? Why did I do that? Because you'll go back and go, it happened. It was organic when it did. And, you know, I'm not one of these because, you know, when I was growing up and I had my kids, there was all kinds of books around like, well, you need to do this. Be your
There
kids.
were books when you had
Yes,
children?
way back when. But that's back when you read and you didn't just listen to it on tape or watch a YouTube video. Oh, well, you know, I don't hate that though. I don't hate that. Or have a podcast. Yes. Shout out to podcast. But it would say like, you need to tough love your kids. So you tough love your kids. But then Dr. Spock's saying, no, you do not tough love your kids. You let your kids do whatever they want and you only stop them. So there's all these conflicting views. So you got to take what really works for you and aligns with your personal values, right? And that is how you're able to do that. Stop. Watch your language. Watch the words you use. There are words that are inherently inflammatory. I mean, like, calm down. Who in the free world wants to be told to calm down? Those are probably the two most inflammatory words in the English language, right? But yet our inkling when somebody starts to amp up is calm down, right? But people, trigger words. So it's practice is what it is. Practice and hanging around people who make you better. That's what you got to do.
Absolutely.
I have to give so much credit to my wife because when we had our first daughter, she was like, we're going to parent like people who have 5 children because by the time they have 5, you can't pay attention to all of them. So
Yes.
like, she was like, we're just going to act like my friends who have lots of children, like when there's 4 in the room, it's like, I don't know where they all are, but I'm sure they're fine. And it's like, okay, well, if we do that, then it's kind of that was her. And
It's smart. It's
gone,
really smart.
It's gone pretty well so far.
I think that it's
I'm
called
more
the
triggered than
the
she
benign neglect school of parenting. Jennifer Garner talked about it. She says she practices benign neglect with her children.
First of all, love that title.
Right?
But it's like that commercial. Have you guys ever seen the commercial where the mom has the baby and she's like very regimented and she's doing everything's all in her diaper bag, and then by baby 2, she's like handing the one baby to the mechanic and being like, let me get this out of my purse. She's got comb in her hair. You know what I mean? It's just like I can remember so specifically, Josh he had a frame. He was 2. He had a frame in his hand because I would just remove stuff that would be dangerous and just let him, like I said, free roam chickens.
Yeah.
And I would let him go. And he got a frame and he was banging the frame, cause and effect, whatever. And it broke. And there was a little bit of glass. I was so afraid that he had cut his hand. He didn't cut his hand. I called the pediatrician. I have an emergency. Oh my God. My son broke a frame and I can't even look at his hand. It could be bleeding. This was me. Like, I'm so embarrassed by that. I'm embarrassed to admit that. But then Natalie literally took a roll down the steps and I was like, she's fine. Because all of those experiences taught me that I need to, calm down. See what I did there?
Yeah.
That wasn't even planned. But, when someone's telling you how to feel, that's the inflammatory part. When someone is telling you how to feel, that extends to your children too.
I'm really bad at that.
Yeah.
Yes, we all are. Because we know
Even
better.
this morning, before we went to school.
Well, because you had somewhere to be. You probably had a lot going on and you were trying to get things going. And then you got, a 4-year-old?
Yeah.
4 is great. What, boy or girl?
Girl, it's better than 3.
No, girls are just, they're so astute and their observations are always spot on. And it's always something you do not want to hear, right?
Yeah.
And it's right there with this.
I was trying to teach a lesson too. That probably didn't go well.
Well, and you're trying to teach a lesson. Remember, overwhelmed, anxious, tired, hungry.
I was probably really mean to her all the time.
You will go home and apologize.
Yeah. Well,
But remember,
maybe.
she's not even going to know. She's not even,
true.
because remember, we think of things with our adult brains, right? Our cortexes are developed. And children, like, things will happen to your kids in your life, and you'll be like, oh my God, this is the worst thing that's ever happened. They didn't get chosen for the spelling bee. What are we going to do? And so you're up all night. Oh my God. How am I going to deal with this? They didn't get chosen for the spelling bee. This is the worst thing ever.
Facebook posting,
And everybody,
school shaming.
Yes, yes. And you're like, I'm
calling
going to
out
go.
teachers.
She got hundreds on all of her spelling tests, and she's not chosen for the spell. What is this about? Well, all of that you're thinking, all of that you're feeling, and that kid has already forgotten that spelling bee was a thing. So I think one of the things that's parents, as spouses, anyway, we're thinking differently because of the way our brains are patterned, right? We know more, and when you know better, you do better, right? We're thinking of things because we're trying to problem solve, because we just want our children to be happy, right? But just be cautious. Be cautious because they're not thinking the same way you're thinking. And when you put yourself into that perspective, it's going to make parenting a little bit easier for you. Say this to yourself: am I adult braining this? Ask yourself that. Am I adult braining this? Am I asking something out of my child in a time when we're all rushing out of the house to go to school and to work am I asking them to do something that they're not able to do because everybody's at a heightened state of arousal, right? Those are the things you got to ask yourself. And then you screw up and then you fix it. Then you do better next time. And that's how you do it. That's how you learn.
Okay, so you and Dr. Perry need to co-write a book because he offered us very similar advice.
First of all, just have a minute.
Now you're dysregulating Tiffany.
I know.
You just put her in a place where she's like, you would like me to write a book with who? Wow.
Dr. What?
I would listen. I would be like, I'll type, you talk.
Right.
Okay, that's what I would say. Because
We'll get you a fan.
yes, I will definitely need a fan because first I'm at high risk for hot flash, but that's an aside. We could do a whole podcast on that, everybody. But that I also did 12 years of Help Me Grow. So Help Me Grow was a birth to 3-year-old program. First, it was birth to 5, which is really ideal because that's that huge chunk of brain development. But I did that for 12 years, and I loved what I did. It branched out into supervision, and it branched out into developmental evaluations to get children eligible for Help Me Grow services, right? Like if they had some delays and we were working through that. And that was at a time when like autism was peaking. And so the sensitivity that is required to talk to parents about what's going on with this idea that they had for parenting, that made a huge, I was really good at that. And they used to call me the baby whisperer because I could always calm down crying babies. And I used the ideas that Dr. Bruce Perry talks about in the optimal caregiving: present, attentive, attuned, and responsive, right? All I did is I look at that baby. I would start making faces to the baby. My favorite was pretend like I was sleeping. Pretend like I was sleeping. And then that baby would pretend like they were sleeping and eventually go to sleep. And I was like, score, touchdown, once again, victory. So I got like the baby whisperer was my moniker because this is what I was really good at. So,
I know parents who would pay you big bucks to do that.
Oh, yeah.
yeah, because you can't reason with dysregulated. And what is a screaming baby?
Dysregulated.
And what is a mom who's been dealing with the screaming baby for
Extra
an hour and a half?
dysregulated.
Extra
And
dysregulated.
probably on the verge of divorce.
On the verge of divorce. Sad because why can't I make my baby stop crying? And the stranger walks in and can make my baby stop crying. Well, you know why that stranger? Because that stranger has not just dealt with that child for 2 days of crying. And I had a colicky boy. My boy was colicky. Turns out I was terrible at parenting at the beginning. I had very little support. My younger sister had my nephew 6 days after my son, and her husband was deployed in Korea. So all of the family resources were going to her. So my mom was there, my dad was there, and my older sister didn't do much. She was more like, they make too much noise and they stink. So so she did not participate much in that. So my support system was relatively impoverished. So I look back now and I go, that's why. That's why that situation was bad for me, because it didn't even really matter if my husband was helping out with the child. It just mattered if he was supporting me, and he was working full-time plus trying to keep us afloat. We bought a house, every ring in the circus is going on there too, like everybody. So when you don't have the support, that will contribute to your parenting. It will 100% contribute. And there was a time my mother-in-law wanted to come over all the time. God rest her soul. Sharon White was an amazing woman in so many ways. She taught me things that I would have never known, including how to save money to buy something. Oh, yeah. But she would come over and I would further dysregulate because I'm like, I just know she's judging how terrible I'm doing with this. And so then, my husband would try to make me feel better and say things like this: we all expected you to do way worse than you're doing. What? Who says that?
Oh,
So let's just throw out there. This is my ex-husband. All right. It's my ex-husband. But you see what I'm saying? Like, that support made me, or not having that support made me probably not the parent I would have been had I had it. Right? Because I was way different with the second one, who is lawless, by the way, but still love her. Still love her. And she's smart and independent and had it together. I admire that. I admire that so much because I come from a generation where there's a place for women. We're one step above the boomers. So the fact that this generation will say what they want and do what they want a little differently, like have a voice, where we were just like, shh, just take it. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. Everything's fine. We were that crazy cat on the T-shirt with our hair. But it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. You don't want to give me a promotion. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. It's probably my fault. Right? Matthew can relate. You can relate, Matthew.
We're very close in generations, and it is how some of the things we did were wrong, and the world is changing. So how do you, when dysregulation is almost allowed and acceptable? Because my parents could give me that look and I immediately stopped what I was doing. Not that they were wrong. It's just
really
it
trying
worked.
to get that where I can just look at my children. That would be great.
Yeah. Well, and it worked. I mean, and
it did.
But that wasn't right. So how do you now find that balance and not create what I've heard referred to as the tissue paper generation?
Did I tell you that?
It was you, yes.
It was me.
what is that? Like, what does that mean?
They just easily crumble. But that's that part of that impatience that I talk about. But then I circle back because I'm somebody who is constantly reinventing myself. I am constantly going, you know what? Maybe that wasn't the best way to look at it. I see now, and I talk to people and I learn, and I'm jealous. I'm jealous that I wasn't allowed to have feelings and emotion. That was really hard. I mean, mental health back when we were growing up, shut your mouth.
That didn't even exist.
Shut your mouth. But interestingly, I went into a field that was permeated with mental health because I was like, people should have a voice. Not everybody's just being a crybaby. But that's how we were raised. We were raised like, if you show emotion, if you have a problem, you're a crybaby. So that's why I said the tissue paper generation, because they crumpled really easily. But they crumbled really easily because they were allowed to have feelings. And they also were exposed to stuff that we got to be kids in. I mean, did you ever have a drill for a school shooting? I didn't.
No.
I never even heard of a school shooting until I was pregnant with my son in 1997. Oh, God, I'm dating myself.
I know.
Terribly. But those things were going on. We just didn't know about it.
Well, Dr. Perry talked about this, and my question is, when you talk about, because I'm looking at the two people in the room that have young kids, I was allowed to go to the playground unsupervised 2 blocks away, come home when the street light comes on. Doc, you say something that I think is essential, and I don't know if you say this for kids, but like, don't be involved, be essential. I've heard you say that. It's on my desktop at work. But, when I think about, Lynette or Clint taking their kids, who I adore, and letting them go to the playground alone. Dr. Perry's saying you need that unsupervised or that playtime time to be creative and learn skills. Our generation was allotted. If your daughter was at the playground by themselves, or your son, somebody would call children's services.
If my kid was playing in the front yard by himself, someone would put up a red flag.
Yeah.
It's a different world for sure.
Well, and I think that, and just for the audience, I did not hear the conversation that you guys had with Dr. Perry. We are just so on the same wavelength. just going to say that. We just, I really respect his teachings, and from my own personal experience, I mean, this is effective, right? So here's where it's important. This is when you're present and parallel. Okay, so you're not watching. Okay, well, stop that. Don't do that. Come off the slide. This is where you are sitting at a bench. You can see out of the periphery and you can watch what's going on, and you do not intervene. You do not come up behind them. If they start to have a tussle with another kid, you're just you're consciously observing what's happening, because safety's huge, right? Safety's huge. But you're being present and parallel. That's what you need to do. So you can be there, but you don't have to be involved in everything that they're doing. How then will they learn to self-regulate? Right?
That's actually a little bit of boomer wisdom, and I criticize the boomers a lot, but my father-in-law took my 5-year-old to the McDonald's play space. And Henry was in the play space, and he had what I think was his first encounter with a real bully, someone who was pushing him, grabbing him, and it sounded pretty rough. Henry came home and told me about it. And I asked my father-in-law, what did you do? I was like, did you see this happening? How did you intervene? He said, I didn't do anything. He said, I watched. I made sure it didn't get too bad. And I thought, that was probably the right choice.
It was a good choice.
Yeah.
It was a good choice because your son learned a lesson right there. And he also learned that he was going to have to be self-reliant because nobody was coming up from the back. That would not have happened had you been there.
Yeah.
I can tell you that was really a challenge for me too. I was, and my husband calls me this, and I don't get mad at him for it, but he calls me Rescue 911. Because when something goes on with the kids, he's like, what are you going to do, Rescue 911? And so... And I was particularly, and in my defense,
show like Baywatch, she can
Right.
have like a slow motion intro and all this stuff.
but I have to be in all black. That's what I have to do. I wore red because my sister made me. She goes, "You're going to be on film, so you have to wear something colorful." But if it would have been up to me, I'd have been clad in black. But I don't lost my train of thought. Where were we at?
Rescue 911.
Rescue 911.
What are you going to do?
I had to learn to be more present and parallel, and I was better with my daughter than I was with my son. But in my defense, my daughter's a type 1 diabetic, diagnosed at 7. So I dove a little deeper into that because I was always like under the guise of its safety. And so then I impose like what I nickname everything. I give it everything's a syndrome, right? I give her sick child syndrome because I was always there to meet those needs. And that is how you create the inability to be self-reliant. And so I look back now and go, man, I should have been more present in parallel. By the time I was working here and really knowing Dr. Bruce Perry, too late.
It's like that commercial. Have you seen the commercial where the mom's reading or in a bathtub and the kid goes, "Mom, I'm bleeding," and she goes, "There's Band-Aids in the kitchen," and then she goes, "It's really bad," and she says, "Get two."
Yes, yes. Don't you love how we reference? We're
Yeah.
pop culture
Yes.
referencers. We just do that a lot.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, one thing I think about, especially in terms of your work, is we have this conversation, and I just want to acknowledge that, like, Clint and I and you, we are in places of such privilege with how we get to parent our kids.
Right.
And a lot of the families you work with do not have that privilege. They do not have the support network. They are, really fighting to meet essential needs. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I imagine regulation is so much harder in those circumstances.
And you know what? That's that part where, I make little comments about tissue paper or whatever. But I'm here to tell you that these are the people who need us even more. These are the people who need these lessons even more and have a lot less ability to understand those. Because what do we talk about? An overwhelmed, tired, hungry child cannot learn, cannot function. An overwhelmed, tired, hungry, thirsty Tiffany cannot function. Lynette, Matthew, Clinton, none of us, right? So when you are already at a deficit, you need the support and of all the R's that we talk about. We're talking about rhythm and repetitive and respectful. Relational is your most important. What you need to do for those families is build a support system around them. They are never going to be able to do it without a support system. And then with the lack of judgment, and the understanding of the privilege that you're from, that's how you're approaching it. You're building up the support network. We had the Bridges program here at the Village for a while, and I supervised that program. And the number one thing we would do with these emancipated foster youth from 18 to 21 was connect them to 3 supports off the bat, 3 supports that can help you, because you're not going to get anywhere unless you're going to have somebody who's going to be able to support you. So with the families that we're working with, even the foster families, talk about, you have 4 placements of exceptional needs kids. You need supports. And then Dr. Perry gave me a really good idea about like looking at a clock of time and where the most behaviors or the most issues are, which I can imagine are probably between 3 and 9, because it's dinner time, it's bedtime. Those are stressful times for kids. Or from 7 to 9, getting up for school, going to school, the pressure of those kind of things are a lot for kids. So building a support system around them is really the only thing that you can do. And approach it with understanding. Educate these people when they are in an calm alert state about what they're feeling. Talk to them about that. Normalize that for them. Because remember, all of us had somebody who taught us to be humane, right? A lot of the times, the people who were teaching them were people who were at a deficit as well, right? People do well if they can. If they don't, they have a set of lagging skills that need coached up. And that's what we want to do. We want to coach them up.
So when you see these lagging skills, and to be maybe a little pop culture right now, there's a wave of TikTok and Instagram videos of adults just throwing massive tantrums in public places, on planes, in Target, at restaurants. And these are people who are otherwise professionals. They have made it so far in life. They, at least on the outward, we don't see what has happened to them that maybe has made them who they are. When you see someone that dysregulated in a space, how do you respond to that?
Well, here first you have to have a permission slip, because there are boundaries, and intimacy barrier is a thing. So when somebody is really freaking out about something, that present and parallel is your only recourse. That's your only recourse, because if I'm going to come at you when you're having a tantrum, I'm not quelling that tantrum. I might be able, you're going to hear 7% of what I say. So words don't make a difference. Tone makes a difference, 38%, right? So I could be like, what can I do for you? I have to say it very calmly. But remember, when these things are happening and someone is misbehaving in that kind of manner, you're starting to feel it too, right? So staying there is very important. I get involved in situations that are, my assistance is requested. And so in a situation like that, it's got to kind of play out depending on what's happening, right? But coming right at somebody, I would walk alongside somebody and I'd be like, what can I do for you? And I would try to talk in that tone. And I would keep my nonverbals very indiscriminate. I would not be too movie and shaky because it could be perceived as aggressive. But, you know, an adult in a tantrum is a whole different situation because my expectation, my worldview is get your crap together. Come on. Right.
Right.
So
thanks.
that's even more challenging. Right. But if you can't do this, the mano-a-mano eye contact thing with somebody who is having a full out tantrum, because then once shame hits, they amp up. Right.
Sure.
And then it becomes even more conflictual and adversarial. And that is not what you want to do. So anytime someone is having a situation, your kids, parallel that, friends, parallel it. And we had a situation with a teacher, and this teacher was so great. When she would have kids who would dysregulate, there's a little boy who would throw some blocks. So she would go, she would clear the room because the audience has to go, right? Clear the room, and then he would just be running around throwing toys and being upset. She would just take some blocks and she would just build with the blocks. Not say anything, present, parallel, just build with the blocks. And eventually, the child would be like out of steam, come over and start to build with the blocks, learning this is what you do with the blocks, with no words being said, observation happening. But that's a lot. I understand that that's a lot. But this process, nothing is going to come easy that it's going to be effective until it becomes integrated into your everyday routines and activities. But I say that with also saying, allow yourself to have a bad day, friends. We all will have them. I just told you a story that happened like a month ago. And I eat, drink, and sleep this. I really do. I cut this with my steak and eat it. I love it. I love it because it's made everything in my life better. It's made everything, my relationships better and everything. So it can really work.
Tell us about the story. I need your help. But I do it at home now, and John has picked up on it where he'll go, don't try to desensitize me. Or I'll grab him and go, I need your help. But that is a great tip that worked for a couple months at our house.
Well, and
Jonathan caught on.
But your kids may not.
yeah. So this is something that I was asked about when an adult is dysregulated or when it's a customer servicing. I did some speaking at some safety clubs, and I was asked, like, what do you do when somebody... So our visceral response to somebody asking us to help them is to help them, right? So I always would say, like, if things were like getting out of control, like when we had a lot of foster kids who would have some experiences, and I was on call for 7 years in a row. And so the foster parents would call me and they'd be like, this child is doing XYZ, can you talk to them? And I would be like, sure, give me the phone. So I'd get on the phone and they would be like, she's a this and he's a that and this is what, and I'd be like, I need your help. I would start with, I need your help. And they'd go, well, okay, you need my help. Taking them out of that moment, making that about me needing them. I need something from you. So now you have to turn it around so you can hear what I need. I can't tell you how many times that worked. It was so effective. And then when that stopped working, I would do, what can I do? How can I help you? Those were the things that I would say. And they're disarmed for a minute because they're like, well, you're going to, what? So those phrases, sometimes you have to refine them some, but you have to be able to deliver it in a way that your tone stays even. And that's wherein lies the challenge. That's the challenge. But everybody here is up for a challenge. So.
Wow.
This was amazing.
Absolutely
Yeah.
incredible.
We're going to have you back, right?
Well,
Yes.
we
You
have
gotta
a
come
we have a
back.
second segment for
We're
you.
gonna have
if
a
you're
second
cool with
segment.
it. Do you want to do it now?
Oh, sure.
All right, I've got to pull up some questions. So I'm going to start this with a little story about the first time I ever encountered Tiffany, which was at my orientation here at the Village Network. And Tiffany was the person who came in to teach us about the neurosequential model of therapeutics, which I have to say, I'm so grateful that the Village makes that part of everyone's orientation, because I'm not a clinician, I'm not in the field, but I wanted to understand what we were doing here. And I realized immediately why this was so important professionally, but also like I took it straight to personal. So Tiffany came in and started talking to us about dysregulation. She explained how the brain works and like how, we get stuck in our brainstem and how we can't access things, and started talking about the R's and ways to intervene. And like me as a parent of Henry, who I think was then 4, I was taking notes. I was like, oh my gosh, this is my life. This is so
She was
applicable.
copiously noting.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, she's really into this. Awesome.
And like other people were like there trying to ask her like professional questions. And I'm like, no, I need your help here. This is important. So immediately then I was like, Tiffany's my new best friend at this job. And it just so happened that I had an opportunity to practice what she preached that evening. And I went home with all of this new information in my head about about what dysregulation was and what it meant for me and what it meant for my kid. And I came home to a dysregulated kid. Like you said, it was that dinner time. I got home, I knew he was hungry, but he didn't want to admit he was hungry. He wanted to play. And so he's running around going nuts. And then the play immediately turned into a sort of meltdown, and he was unhappy. He was angry. He's mad at me. He's mad at the world. And I thought I was able to draw immediately on what you had said about, okay, figure out what the need is. Why can he not do well right now? Figure out how to calm myself down enough so that I can address this appropriately. And so I took some deep breaths myself. I grabbed his silly putty because you had been talking about the benefits of sensory things. And I said, buddy, I really need to make some dinner right now so that we can eat. Do you want to play with this putty? And I'll go do that. And he just like sits down like the grumpy monkey and started like, fine. And he's still like mumbling and like cranky. But I saw him start to calm down, and that was enough time for me to get some food on the table. And he came and he ate, and we talked, and it was so much better. And I was like, oh my God, it works.
But I like what you said there when you said, I had to get myself. Because you felt yourself spiraling, right?
Yeah, I was hungry too.
You're hungry. You just had an all day long orientation training, which can be exhausting. That is very tiring, right?
Oh, yeah.
So you got to give yourself some credit there, because you took that moment to go, I think I got to get myself together. Like, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
I need to do this. And then you were able to handle that situation. So, you better pat yourself on the back, because a lot of people could not get the information I talked about because they couldn't think, because they started to dysregulate, right? So you were there. You were ready.
Yeah, it was
just
great
provided the
preparation
tools.
to have.
You built the house.
You gave me a sort of path, and I think that one of the most important things I learned from you was really like, if you can't reason with dysregulation. So I knew that there was no way I was going to be able to be like, you need to calm down right now.
Right. Yes. Settle down.
Right,
Yeah,
settle
that
down.
goes-
Stop throwing pillows. And instead, I'm like, here's a pillow that's great for punching, buddy. Take this one. Like,
And that's exactly. See, those kind of things are disarming, but you can't think of those things when you're spiraling out of control, too.
exactly.
And then you start to question yourself, because I can remember this as a parent. There's so many things you're like, I'm terrible at this.
Oh, it's
Terrible at
overwhelming.
this. Yes.
And
And when you're
so-
not used to being terrible at something, and then you're terrible at it in your own head, because I promise you, you're not terrible at it. You're your worst critic.
But yeah, it definitely feels that way sometimes. And I started thinking about, and I talked to you about this, and I reached out to you afterwards, like how much value there is in parents learning about the work we do here, not just because it's meaningful to kids who are very vulnerable and need our help, but it's meaningful to our own families and relationships. And so when I knew you were coming back today, I sent out a little text on my group chat. And I was like, Tiffany White's coming in, and she knows a lot. Send me your parenting
No
questions.
pressure.
So, and Clint, feel free to jump in at any point, because I know you have your own, you and Allison, it's so nice to have a perspective from someone who's not in the thick of the house,
Right.
So I'm scrolling back way far because I got a lot of questions right around. The first one was, how do you raise empathetic kids that don't feel entitled to have the world cater to them?
Well, you have to give them some autonomy. When we were talking before about how Henry had that situation and engaged, and you would have intervened, but your father-in-law didn't intervene. Those are the things we have to do, because what you're doing is you're walking alongside of them. You're processing it after. You and he processed it afterwards. But the reality is, you have to let them learn empathy. You have to model empathy. They are watching everything that you're doing. So keep this in mind. This is the key, right? We are not born humane. Someone teaches us that. You have to be that lesson for your child. You're not making them entitled by showing concern. by showing compassion. You're not making them entitled. Those are two different things entirely, right? When you are swooping in and saving them every single time they do something that they shouldn't have done, or just making excuses for behaviors, that's setting up an entitlement. Being empathetic is just showing that emotion, like I care about what happens to you. Those are two, in my opinion, those are two very separate things. Entitlement is where the rules don't apply to you, really. And empathy is, I can understand how that would be terrible. So that's how you have to look at it, because you're not raising an entitled kid by showing them empathy, by demonstrating, by living empathy in your own life. So I don't mind, and didn't want to disqualify that question, but I think that's two very different things.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And I have kind of a follow-up to what you said, which is when you say, like, don't make excuses for kids' behavior, I struggle with maybe this is even the wrong word, I struggle with what discipline should look like, how we react when kids do something that is objectively wrong, when they're unkind to another kid, when they have damaged something they knew they shouldn't have been playing with, and, things like that.
And, I have huge issues with the word accountability, because when people are saying, I want them to be accountable, we hear this a lot in foster care. I want them to be accountable. No, you want them punished. When they're saying that word, they want them to suffer for whatever it is that they have done. Put a hole in the wall. I want them accountable. No, you want them punished. What we need to do is take discipline for what it is. To learn, right? We have to learn lessons for what we do. And those lessons often are centered around natural consequences. Natural consequences for what has occurred. There is a hole in the wall. Now we can't afford to get the game that you were going to do. This is a result of and that's not a cognitive thing that a 4 and a 5-year-old is going to get.
Sure.
But you broke the toy. Now we have to put the toy into the trash can, and we're not going to buy another toy. This is a consequence of your action. It isn't me then, rubbing your face in the toy or whatever people,
Yeah.
Or keep saying, you remember when I had to throw away the toy? That's not going to work with kids, because kids are in the moment. Remember, kids are thinking they're constantly thinking, and their idea of time is based on their state, right? And for as much development as they have in their brain, which we know is a lot by the time they're 5, right? There's a lot of development that's happened already. So they can access some pretty powerful places within the context of their understanding of their environments, because the brain is templates, right? That's all of your memories are your templates. So when you only have 5 years of memories, you don't have like we have in our over 30 templates.
Yes, we're 32.
The second question I got is, what are some ways to encourage your child to open up about their feelings and reassure them that you won't be upset about how they're feeling? So I think the second way she phrased this is how to let them know you're a safe place to be vulnerable.
That is only by experience. That is going to be something that they're going to learn over time. And remember, this person sounds like she might be thinking with adult brain.
That's
or
a good point. Yeah.
him. I don't know who said that question. It sounds like we're having an adult brain, because remember, children don't necessarily have to connect everything with emotion, right? They're in the now. They're in the moment. So the modeling of that, the continued experience of not being consequenced for having a feeling will make a difference. You're having a tantrum and you're like, your teeth talking, right? Your teeth talking or whatever. In those moments, it's when it's very important to be like, you look like you're angry. I'm sorry you're angry. And they're like, I'm angry. Okay, let's talk about it. What do you need? They're not even going to be able to articulate. They're dysregulated, right? So that's when we go parallel and we start to wait for them to come alongside that. Play with your Play-Doh, with your silly putty, whatever. You don't even have to say anything. You sit next to that child and you start to build the blocks, do the Play-Doh. And then they're like, what's going on here? And then you're like, you feel a little better now? You want to talk about it? No, I don't want to talk about it. You need some goldfish? Like whatever.
Yeah.
That's how it goes. That's how it goes. But as far as encouraging a child to talk about their feelings, you are walking up Mount Kilimanjaro with flip-flops and a 50-pound backpack, because they're not thinking like you're thinking. Being is going to be more important than thinking. Doing is going to be more important. That is where they're going to get their lesson. You know, I was raised under the do as I say, not as I do. Most ridiculous concept in history. Your children want to be just like you. Be the person that you want them to be. And that's how that happens. It's way more organic than people give it credit for. I was just telling, sis, don't overthink it. Don't overthink it. Don't use you're in your adult brain.
Yeah.
Just be there and be present for when that child wants to talk. Present, attentive, attuned, and responsive. Of the 4 of those, attuned takes some time because that's recognizing cues, right? But once you start to recognize those cues, you can head things off at the pass. So if all of the parents practice present, attentive, attuned, and responsive, the issues that they're having will mitigate themselves. Because that's how it is. You know, and it's not giving a kid everything they want every time they want. Those basic needs are met. They know that you're there for them. They're talking to you and you're not on your phone. Mm-hmm. You know, that's the kind of stuff. That's the kind of stuff that parents have to do. I think that some of we tend to be overly attentive in this generation because we're afraid. Because you're a generation who grew up with fear too. Mm-hmm. So you kind of superimpose that onto your kids, your little Gen A's, your little Gen Alphas. But that's what I mean. Like that's kind of what's happening. It's a cycle of stuff. And you got to be able to say, listen, autonomy, because what's old is new again in generations, you know, like things that we were trying, we're now going, wait a second. It was way better to be this way than it was to tough love. It was better to be nurturing than it was to tough love, you know? And so what's old is new again a lot of the time. So I just think that that's an adult brain thought.
That is so powerful I think just to acknowledge how much we overcomplicate parenting. We do. Because we're trying so hard to get it right.
Trying so hard. And there is no perfect parent. I don't care. Even the people, I promise you, these people who write all these books on parenting and they say, oh, I did this and I did that. They screwed up too. They had the car alarm going off crazy. They had the dog barking and the daughter yelling and everybody making choices to go down paths and burn down villages, right? Mm-hmm. They had all of that. And if they say they didn't, then they're not authentic. And authentic is how you're going to get through it.
Absolutely.
Be authentic. Be authentic parents. Stick to your core values. Demonstrate for your children how you would behave in situations, and you aren't going to go wrong as a parent. Stop thinking in your adult brain. Start giving yourself some grace, you guys.
I have one more question for you, and then we'll save the rest so we can really hopefully get you back.
Oh, anytime. I love this. Oh my God, I was born for this.
So how do you deal with anxiety in your kids about new experiences? And I personally have a very anxious kid. This was asked by a friend of mine, but I think, as you pointed out, we have a bit of an anxious generation right now.
We do. We do.
How do we help them try new things, get out of their comfort zone?
Dosing. Dosing is how we do that. So say like you have a child who's going to school for the first time. So it starts with, we just get in the car, we drive past the school. That's day 1. And day 2, we get to the school, we get out of the car. Day 3, this is a process. So when children are anxious, they need to know what to expect. Not down the road. So you're going to go to school and you're going to have lunch. No. Within what's going to happen, they need to get cues about what's going to happen. You're going to walk in the door, you're going to go to your cubby, and then you're going to sit down. These are the things that need to happen. You need to dose them into these things. Anxiety, for anybody who suffers from anxiety, dosing is the way to do it. Heads up them what is going to happen, because then they're going to be able to process it and be ready for it, even in their little tiny brains. Mm-hmm. What you do is you eat it like an elephant, one bite at a time, right? Short doses. That's how you deal with the anxiety. You break tasks down, and that's how you deal with it. And it's very effective. It's very effective. And you'll see in kindergarten classes, even in preschools. You know how they have visual cues for this? They have the schedule. The kids all know. Like they have a 8 to 9, and they have pictures of kids playing. 10 to... That's huge important for kids. They know what to expect. Structure, predictability, consistency. So for anxiety, dosing is the way to go. And when it's something that's particularly stressful, you got to take it out into little tiny bits and pieces until they're ready for the next step to go. But everybody who struggles with anxiety, knowing what's happening next makes a huge difference. And I know that you're going to be like, well, sometimes things get out of joint in life and whatever, but that's when things get a little more complicated. And then when you start, after you get a child regulated, you can start giving them some coping skills. Like, what's going to work for you? How does your body feel? Is your body starting to get shaky? Put your shoulders to your ears, count to 3, relax. And then they're going to start learning. When their body starts to feel this way, this is what we do. This is how I regulate. My nephew struggled with anxiety terribly, and he would twist his hair. He would twist his hair when he would get nervous. I mean, he's like a 36 on the AC, like a little, just his worst critic, right? Just wants to do great all the time. And so I would work with him because they were still on the cusp of a generation that didn't want to admit mental health was a thing. Because they were raised by us, who were terrible at admitting mental health was a thing. And my nephew was raised by my parents as well. My sister, they did the whole live in the same house. So some of their ideas that we were raised with were really implanted into him, which was not great. But, I recognized that when he would get anxious and the hair, and so I was like, let's talk about this because this is going to fly when you're doing a job interview. You know what I mean? But I had to wait that out. But we had a lot of stuff around that was something that we were doing before we even knew we were dosing, was preparing step by step. This is how you do it. It's going to be a little more work on the end of the parent who's got an anxious child, but it will be so effective. And you're going to see the classrooms are set up for anxiety with kids.
That also explains why, Henry's teacher's like, he's the perfect kid. He does so great at school. And I'm showing her a picture. I'm like, this kid?
Is it in here? It's the same one?
Right? But that makes sense because he's in this environment that is
structure, predictable, consistent.
And he comes home and he's got me. So it's
and you're conflicted because you want to give him you want him to be a little free roam chicken, but you also want to have some kind of structure around that for him. But kids, people, everybody does better with structure. Everybody. It's in our mind. We want concrete routines. That's what the limbic part of our system's trying to do. And that's one step before that cortex. It's open for business.
I have one more question before we wrap up.
Just one. I'm
just
kidding.
Just one for this time around. What do you do with a child who will just continually escalate themselves regardless of what you're doing?
Stop doing it. Stop doing what you're doing because you're triggering them. That's what's happening. All right, my cousin called me with this very same question, right? And his middle child would freak out in public, and he would just freak out. And so then my cousin was getting down in his face and talking to him and doing, and it was making the situation 1,000 times worse. So when situations like this, whatever you're doing is not working, okay? So what you're going to have to do is go alongside. Do not this with the kid. You're going to have to be right next to that kid. First, you're going to disarm this child because the child's going to be like, what is going on here? This is different than, this is not our contract, right? So that's going to put a pause right there on, this is not our contract. Usually, he's doing this, this, and this. A predictable pattern that has already templated in your child's brain, right? You have to deviate from that, which is going to be hard because you have patterns that you're used to, right? So that parallel part of things is going to be where you're at. Just like I was saying before, just you're present and you're parallel, and you start fiddling with something, get that. And if it keeps going, it's got to go its route. It's got to go its route. But whatever you're doing, it's feeding it. Because there's really no way.
So even disengagement?
What,
So let's say
you're not disengaging.
Let's say hypothetically, my daughter's throwing a huge fit in her bedroom, and it's time for bed, and she's not getting something she wants, but it's bedtime, so we're gonna stay in the bedroom. But then I sit down by the door, and she comes and just starts pounding on the door, wanting to leave, but I'm not really doing anything. I'm just sitting there, and it just continues to get worse and worse and worse and worse and worse.
Because why? Because she's dysregulated.
Right.
And you are chasing your tail at this point. So ideally, stopping that train before it starts. So putting in a routine that is going to go A, B, C for her at night
Sure.
is going to be your best bet. And if you already have something
We
like
have
that,
that.
in, add something else into it. Add something new, something that's going to be extra calming. Like if you have a white noise machine,
Already there.
we're all going to listen to this white noise. Do you read a story?
2.
Okay, so what's so what's your routine?
Go to the bathroom,
Mm-hmm.
brush your teeth, pajamas, get tucked in, read 2 books, sing 2 songs. Good night.
So, and you have a noise machine?
Her hatch turns on at 7 p.m. It
Okay.
turns pink and turns the noise on. And before that, it's orange to let her know that it's time to get ready for bed.
So here's my suggestion. So I say 1 book, 1 song, and then you do some relaxing yoga poses together. Okay? There's a whole bunch. If you don't have
Sure.
to, you know the lady. I'm sure Allison, that's a wife.
Yes.
She knows some yoga poses.
Yes.
Just some comfort. This is what we're going to do. These make our bodies tired. This is what we're going to tell the child. Is it when you go to leave, she starts, or it's periodic?
It depends. It's not all the time. Usually
Okay.
bedtime goes fine. I'm mostly asking because like what tends to happen is when she gets upset, even it seems that whatever calming tactics we try, even if we are parallel and calm or whatever, that she will just continue to make the situation worse. So like another one would be so the other night we went to swim lessons and it was canceled because of the storm. So they had to come home. Allison was like, she's great, totally fine with it. Made the mistake of like, we're going to take a bath when we get home. And she act like she's brought the swimsuit upstairs. I want to wear the swimsuit in the tub. No, because she's like thinking, oh, we're going to pretend swim lessons. No, we're just going to take a bath and go to bed. Well, that's like, now we're into
Yeah.
a fit because I want to wear the swimsuit, blah, blah, blah. And then we're in the tub. The water's too hot. The water's too cold. The water's not warm enough. Okay, well, now it's warmer. Now it's too cold. And it over and over and over again. So like, regardless of whatever we're doing.
And this started with the disappointment of the swim
Correct.
lesson. She did great,
She did great.
but she was starting to what?
Right. Come down.
She was starting to walk down that arousal continuum. And then when more adversity, she was met
Correct.
with more adversity, she got more and more
Right.
upset. So in situations where it's perilously out of control, you just have to let that
Just let it happen.
best that you can play out and keep her safe and be present, attentive, attuned, responsive. You can model for her how to stay chill. The problem we see a lot is it's hard to stay chill in those situations. So you're
100%.
yelling and then it's getting higher and you stop it right now. And it's getting worse and worse and worse, spiraling things out of control, really. But if she's not doing this chronically,
No, it's not
there's-
chronic.
and-
I just
and-
didn't know if there's like,
well, there's no magic wand for kids.
come
Like,
on, Tiffany.
I know, right?
I need you to
What
deliver
we're going to
the
do is
magic.
we're going to put Tiffany in speed dial. Like, this is happening.
Right, this is the outsider
gonna face
Uncle
I would say
Matthew. with-
the I need your help
I'd- well-
is going to have to be where you're going to go next.
But I also think of like Patrick when he talks about in his book, like the Chucky nephew as soon as the door's shut. From the outsider looking in who doesn't have kids, like I'm thinking like, well, all right, well, what would it hurt if she wore a bath?
See,
Does
and I
that give
think
her
like
the
that, too.
autonomy? Like, what would it hurt? All right, let her wear the bathing suit in. But I'm thinking, okay, it's bath time and you can't clean your body if you're wearing a bathing suit.
Right.
But like wear it and then we'll take it off and I'll hang it up and it'll dry. Like, is
Yes,
that
this
a
is
moment?
an Uncle Matthew thing.
Well, I know,
Right.
But,
Well, because the thing that because
Then she's never getting out of the tub.
Yeah,
Uncle
she's never getting
Matthew.
out of the
All
tub,
right, and then we'll go
every
stay at a
well, I
hotel
want to
with
wear my
pool.
swimsuit in the tub. like
It will be.
we
It'll
know
become
our
a pattern.
we know our own children
It'll
well
be a
enough
thing.
that if I can't allow you to do this because if I do, you will think, oh, I can wear my swimsuit in the tub.
Oh,
And
the
so
worst
now every
choice I ever
time-
made was buying bath bombs to get Henry to take a bath because now he will not take a bath without a bath bomb, and they are so expensive.
Right.
That kid is bougie.
And
He is.
it's stuff like that where it's like I can't allow you to create a pattern because it will like
Yeah, it's all
because
out of the
she's
rhythm.
4 it will to the nth degree be that all the time.
I will just say you are not alone. We have a kid who is also extremely committed to his tantrums. Like
Yeah.
he is more stubborn than me, and that's saying
Listen,
something.
those tantrums are harder for you guys
than it is for them. It
Oh,
really
yeah.
is. And your reaction is going to be the difference in those tantrums. Again, there's that crossroads, friend.
Sure.
And we can't help but to say things like, well, if you calm down, I'll give you a piece of candy. Or if you do,
Right.
and all of us have been guilty of that.
Sure.
But this is an ideal time, at the worst possible time, for you to model how to behave when your body feels a certain way. Just,
I don't want to behave.
you don't want to.
Elevator to the basement right now.
To be the grown up.
Burn this village down.
I have to be a grown up all day.
Yeah.
And like that, they're not going to hear your words. They're not going to.
Yeah.
You have to ride that storm with as much dignity as you can muster for the example that it's going to be for that kid,
Yeah.
for the end result. And you're not going to do it well every time, Clint. I'm sorry to tell you that. But that's all right, because it sounds like you're doing a wonderful job.
We're trying.
You guys are doing a
and
great job.
It's so interesting. Like, I don't know if you feel this, but when we talk about like NMT and all this stuff and how like the reward system thing doesn't work, I'm like, I reward my child all the time. Like I'm bribing and like point systeming all day long.
Because when a child is regulated, they can understand the reward system. And often we don't have regulated children. And that's what that is. Because our foster parents in particular are trying to impose a reward system with children who are dysregulated, right?
Like at a constant.
Yes.
Like just in a state of
at
constant
a constant,
dysregulation.
like their baseline is alarm. Their baseline is already in an emotional part of their brain that they cannot wrap their head around. They can't think past 1 hour.
Sure.
So you're going to say, well, if you behave for the rest of the week, I'm going to give you a piece of candy. Your kids aren't going to be able to think like that
Right.
either. It's got to be within the hour for it to be really something that's going to work with them.
Ours is like if you have a good drop off and a good pickup at school, then you can have candy. And that usually like clicks enough.
Yeah. And it just doesn't work. The reward system, the punishment system does not work when you are dysregulated. Anybody
Sure.
is dysregulated.
Okay.
But I caution you, when you're talking about like the bathing suit situation, it's going to be a pattern. You're adult thinking that.
Sure.
That is not what she's thinking.
Sure.
And so I think that that's what we think. Oh, so now I've set up a precedent, and this is
Yeah.
what's going to be. And I was guilty of that too. And,
Sure.
and I'm sure that you're probably guilty. of
Oh,
that, too.
absolutely.
So I think that there's a fine line, and you did the best you can in the moment.
Right. Yeah. I just get worried because like there are times where there have been times where it's like I'm gonna have like we're gonna do bedtime routine, and if it all goes well, I've got a surprise. And so it's like we're gonna share a cookie before bed. But then like the next 3 days, can we have
Where's
a
my
surprise?
cookie?
Can we have a surprise today?
Yeah. Yeah.
No, we're not gonna have a surprise today. There's no surprise.
These
Sounds
are
like you've got-
unpredictable surprises.
It sounds like he's got a little precocious little girl.
She's
there.
incredibly intelligent. It's-
She's
She's
so-
going to bypass my ability to keep up with her.
I promise you she will, because we thought we were so smart.
No.
And my
she's-
daughter was dangerous.
She's going to be
Yeah.
She's precocious.
so nice to have that one as the
I'm
first.
sorry.
I was there for bedtime one night. I watched that routine go down with a new baby.
Yeah. Yeah.
You are the ultimate optimist
Yeah.
having a second kid.
Sloan was colicky too. It was very similar situation. Like my family lives out of state. Oh, I mean, we could have a whole episode on my life, not my life, but like our like period of having children and just like all of the mental health things around that. I'm sure we could go into.
We
a
could
big
have
episode
fun.
about that.
We could have fun dissecting
We can talk about
that.
it off camera if you like.
Well, I have to do a staff thing at 11, and
I
it
know.
looks like
It's
I'm
11.
late.
Oh, gosh,
You're
I'm
late.
so sorry.
Oh goodness, we could talk to you for hours.
Well, here's the good news. They'll wait for me.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm the star of the show.
Well, and Tiffany White, your humor, humility, and clinical knowledge has definitely given us a lot to think about today. And I think that we cannot wait to have you back.
Yep.
We will definitely have you back.
Oh,
so.
I can't wait. I'm holding you.
We're
guys
gonna
to
have to
that.
have an ongoing Tiffany segment.
oh, absolutely. We love you. We
Yeah.
need to learn from you.
And it's been a long time. I've been removed from parenting for a long time, but man, it's like riding a bike.
You are a hot Yoda.
Oh, well. Thank you.